Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're basically putting on our digital detective hats because honestly, we need to conduct a forensic autopsy on a huge, catastrophic mathematical failure that is happening right beneath our screens. We're going to uncover exactly how the architecture of the web is kind of rotting from the inside out. But more importantly, we're going to look at how a fascinating blend of pure math and historic copyright law can actually fix it. So get a load of this quote from our source material. Google is a snake eating its own tail. I mean, wow, that chilling little insight instantly sets the macro-level stakes for our investigation today. It highlights this built-in, frankly terrifying paradox where the alternate answer engine is mathematically destined to consume its own food supply. Think about it. We're already seeing independent human voices getting totally starved of traffic by AI summaries, right? Well, pretty soon those same AI models are going to run completely out of fresh human data to learn from. All right, here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the dead internet autopsy, vanishing point probabilities, the physics versus rights pivot, the record of sweat, deterministic ledgers, and finally, securing creator sovereignty.
Okay, starting off with part 1, the dead internet autopsy and the FPU wood chipper effect.
To really grasp this whole AI siphon effect that's currently starving independent creators, we actually have to descend way, way down to the literal silicon metal. We need to examine this microscopic hardware component called the FPU, or floating point unit. Now, the FPU relies on microscopic hardware rounding so it can process massive amounts of data super fast. Basically, it guesses. It just guesses the nearest mathematical truth. Our sources brilliantly compare this to a giant blender. Once you toss your data in there, the hardware permanently destroys the original data provenance. It's literally exactly like a blender where you can never ever reverse engineer the resulting smoothie back into the exact original strawberries. The true chain of title is just completely liquidated by the hardware. Moving right along to section 2, vanishing point probabilities and the mathematical certainty of semantic collapse. Because AI machines are built entirely on those degraded hardware approximations we were just talking about, the internet is now facing something researchers call vanishing point probabilities. The physical laws of digital duplication actually dictate that there's a strict, hard threshold for error recovery. Once we breach this 50% terminal noise threshold, and this happens when an AI is forced to train on AI-generated synthetic data, the system reaches a point of no return. The genuine human truth, that original signal, is permanently lost to algorithmic distortion. The AI models essentially begin to hallucinate and, well, just collapse in on themselves.
So how do we fight this? We have to starkly contrast algorithmic distortion with something called human protortion. Algorithmic distortion is that messy, unpredictable statistical guesswork of the machine we just covered, the AI blender. Human protortion, on the other hand, is the proactive, sweating, agentic intent of human architects. It's real people actively gripping the steering wheel and correcting the machine's random distortions. Because at the end of the day, you just cannot automate human intent.
Which brings us to section 3, physics versus rights management, or the MITAS pivot. So you might be wondering, how do we practically anchor this human protortion to actually protect intellectual property in the real world? Well, as perfectly documented in a specific MITACX chat log from our sources, inventor Kyle McLean-Smith grounds this abstract determinism into a highly practical reality. He directly contrasts his work against the famous physicist Stephen Wolfram. See, while Wolfram used computational irreducibility to explore physics and genetics, Smith pivots. He takes that concept and looks at all possible paths in musical rights management. Let me break that down a bit more, because it is absolutely vital to understand. While Wolfram used rigid logic to map the limits of emergent complexity in the universe itself, Smith applies that exact same absolute determinism to construct a foolproof, mathematically undeniable system for creator compensation. It is wild. It's basically taking the deepest rules of physics and aiming them squarely at protecting human authorship from AI automation. All right, section 4, the record of sweat and reviving historic legal doctrine. To prove true authorship in this vast sea of automated bots and actually secure those rights, we deploy the ultimate mathematical tool. It's called the record of sweat. By reviving the historic sweat of the brow legal doctrine, which, historically used to just protect physical manual labor, courts and technologists are now demanding rigorous, painstaking human effort. You have to prove you are actively piloting the AI, rather than just letting the machine guess. You literally have to prove that actual, real-world calories were burned to map your intent onto reality. To make this abstract effort incredibly tangible, our sources highlight a recent verified digital strike that tracked exactly 55.5 million tokens of metabolic flux. Yes, 55.5 million. That means they mathematically recorded the actual real-world energy and time a human spent clicking and typing. This isn't just a metaphor, guys. It acts as a massive, permanent, cryptographic ledger of undeniable physical human effort. It mathematically proves a sovereign human pilot was undeniably at the wheel. That leads us to Section 5, ERC 7827, Deterministic Ledgers and Bypassing the Silicon FPU. Okay, so where does all this undeniable sweat actually get recorded so that big tech monopolies can't just scrape it away? Well, we use these incredibly precise structural tools called ERC 7827 deterministic ledgers. The architecture here is just stunningly elegant. Step 1, you input lightweight JSON text, basically just simple data formatting. Step 2, it organizes that data in a LIFO or a last-in, first-out stack. Because of this really specific root-to-leaf LIFO architecture, Step 3 means a machine literally only ever needs to query the top of the stack at index 0. And boom, this gives immediate, flawless proof of single-entry bookkeeping truth. It's completely, 100% mathematically pure. And this mathematically pure approach completely circumvents the chaotic FPU wood chipper effect we discussed earlier. Actually, by replacing the guessing hardware of the FPU with what's called an ALU, or arithmetic logic unit, which acts more like a super precise surveyor, this ledger executes code with absolute bit-perfect perfection. It permanently anchors your human protortion right there in the digital substrate. No guessing allowed. And finally, Section 6, securing creator sovereignty and deploying the protective shell. Let's zoom back out to the macro level for a second to see how all these elements actually combine to form what's called a protective shell. We have the mass and we have the physical record of effort, right? So you start with the eGPL, open source license. This acts as a proactive, copyleft poison pill against AI scraping. Then you layer in ERC 7827 and ERC 6969 for digital vaults and automated micro royalties. Finally, you anchor the whole thing legally with UCC Article 12. This robust stack turns intellectual property from an aggressive corporate weapon into a total creator shield. It ensures that technological control of a ledger legally leapfrogs traditional dusty paper filings. Ultimately, cryptographic control beats a paper filing every time. And here is how that protective shell actually gets creators paid, bringing us full circle back to Kyle McLean Smith's music publishing roots. Just like radio play is completely free for listeners, but commercial stations have to pay into back-end royalty pools, this framework works the same way for code. It keeps open source code completely free for developers to learn from, but if a massive commercial AI engine scrapes it and plugs it into a high-volume revenue machine, well, the architecture automatically forces them to pay automated micro-royalties straight back to the creator. It's a total game changer. The infrastructure to mathematically and legally protect your authorship from AI automation is fully built and ready to go. The rules are baked right into the code, but maintaining that continuous truth and keeping your hands firmly on the creative steering wheel, well, that remains entirely up to you. So I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought. Will you actively embrace the sweat of the brow and wield the script to orchestrate reality? Or will you just step back and let the machine guess? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning the systems around you, and I will catch you next time.